Meet the Candidate Series. The Arc of Pennsylvania hosted an interview of Tina Burns, candidate for Berks and Schuylkill County's 124th House District, by Joshua Stranix, self-advocate. The Meet the Candidate Series is an opportunity for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families to hear from candidates on disability issues. Candidates from all parties have been invited to participate. The Arc of Pennsylvania is a non-partisan organization and does not endorse political candidates.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our next part of our series, Meet the Candidate. We are here with Tina Burns and the ARC Alliance and the ARC of Schuylkill County as her local chapters. We are very excited to have Tina come on and answer these questions here today. The ARC of Pennsylvania is the state's leading advocacy organization for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. We were founded 72 years ago by parents who sought to see their children with intellectual and developmental disabilities be part of their communities. And we have had a large success. We have 30 local chapters across the state that serve over 50 of our counties, and we have over 13,000 members between self-advocates, parents, family members, and direct support professionals. With us today, we have Tina Burns. Tina is the Democrat candidate running for the PA House 124th District of Schuylkill and Berks County. She is running to replace retiring Representative Jerry Knowles. A veteran, Tina works in healthcare as a consultant to support independent healthcare providers struggling to remain independent small businesses. Some of her key issues are property tax relief, healthcare for all, support services for seniors, veterans, and people with disabilities, education, and the environment. I'm going to turn it over to Paul Stengel with the ARC Alliance to introduce our next individuals.
Pleasure to meet with you, Tina. The ARC Alliance serves Montgomery, Berks, and Bucks County. The ARC is the largest advocacy and provider for people in the United States. And there's a national chapter, an ARC Pennsylvania chapter, and in most of our counties we have ARC chapters. Usually an ARC chapter is just one county. We're kind of unique in the fact that we have 3 counties. I've been working with the ARC since 1986 and enjoyed every minute of it. Pat Leo's with us, and she's our Chief Operator Officer. She has extensive experience in employment and residential provider. I think she's been with us 15 years, and it's been a great 15 years having her with us. The ARC Alliance does a lot of stuff, but the 3 major things they do is guardianship, service coordination, where we see that people get the services they need and monitor the services, and early intervention. We work with babies birth to 3, and 50% of the children we work with by the time they become school age are no longer in the need of support. We have 2 parents with us today. They're kind of have a lot of similarities. Judy is a nurse, and she runs their national program for nurse training for CVS. She has 4 children. Her 17-year-old child, Isabel, has Down syndrome, and she has 3 other children who have what I would call learning disabilities, like ADHD, etc. So she has a challenging life. Dan also has 4 children, and all 4 of those children have some limitations. He has a son, Joey, who has Down syndrome, severely disabled, and autism. He also has a child who had a brain tumor and now is legally blind. He has a child with Asperger's, and he has a child who had some learning disabilities. He is the president of one of the ARC subsidiaries, and Judy is a new member of our board. Josh has an exciting history with the ARC, and as a self-advocate, he was a former member of the Arc of Pennsylvania, a long-time resident of Schuylkill County. Josh is active in local community and participates in Special Olympics. He is the co-chair of the Arc of Pennsylvania System Advocacy and Governmental Affairs Committee, and is passionate about advocating to policies about issues that impact people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, their families, and their caregivers. Josh works. Josh wants to have, like most people with disability, the full experience of that most people have. He wants to live independently, he wants to work, he wants to socialize, and he wants to contribute. Tina, I'm going to turn it over to Josh in 2 seconds, unless you have any questions of any of the parents who are here and or self-advocates.
I really just thank you for allowing me this time, and for the parents, you know, my truest and genuine accolades to you. I know it's not an easy job, and you're probably underappreciated, so know that I appreciate you.
Josh, thank you very much, Tina. Josh, I'm kicking it over to you for the questions.
Thank you. How will you advocate for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families who are on the waiting list for community service?
Well, I mean, I'm speaking to the choir here, but many of our current legislatures don't understand the process of applying for disability services, let alone the lengthy wait times. So I would like to see them automatic and guaranteed. So if elected, I would reach out to service providers to discuss with their current wait time, what their current wait times are, assess the needs of their programs, and then work with other legislators and advocacy groups to try and fill those needs. There's when I've researched that, I've found that there's a lot of great programs, but if organizations are not getting what they need as far as staffing or funding or both, there's certainly going to be gaps in providing the services to those that need them. So it's my intention really to learn as much as I can about the needs of the most vulnerable populations, and then just truly be a voice. I mean, the job of a representative is to represent, hence the name. And I don't think that we've had that ever for this, at least this district. And one of the most important tenets of my campaign is that there needs to be accessibility of services. We have services in place in many cases, but if they're not accessible, they're not really fully utilized or serving any purpose at all.
What investments to expand long-term services and supports in the community for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities will you advocate for?
In talking to parents and young people who need long-term services, and a side note, my daughter had learning disabilities, so I'm kind of got thrown in by fire 20 years ago from that respect. But in talking to other parents that need long-term services, I found that many of them want to have peace of mind about their future. While there are many parents who are fierce advocates for their children, we still have members of our communities who fall through the cracks. So there's a significant need in our school system for social workers and representatives of various agencies like your own, and to educate caregivers on what are the next steps. I mean, we do an arguably okay job while they're in the school system, but then when they become adults, it's like, okay, poof, you're out in the street, good luck with life. And that's just not helping anyone. So whether the work involves estate planning or helping them get a job or maintain their independence, I'm prepared to work to improve and increase access to individuals who can make this transition less stressful. I think that providing tuition assistance or tuition refunds to individuals who pursue the career path serve the community and would go a long way to increasing the number of professionals attracted to the field. I'd like to make a local task force of stakeholders within a community to better assess our unique needs in the district. These services, they're just not limited to our district, honestly. They're all of the Commonwealth, especially our rural communities, and they're not short-time fixes or short-time goals. These need to be a long-term plan, long-term goals with long-time commitment for resources and funding.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Will you support the closure of Pennsylvania's 4 remaining state centers?
Yes. The goal should always be to give people the opportunity for independence. Closing these facilities will allow that money to be allocated somewhere else. It's kind, the centers are a relic of the past. And we need to move forward to a future. And that money of the sale of those properties is actually currently earmarked to help clear the waiting list, which I fully support closing them. So additionally, I would like to work towards expanding Medicaid programs and helping people with intellectual disabilities to live in the community with the assistance to be successful members of the community. It's a time to devote significant attention to supporting economic advancements and independence of those with disabilities. And especially right now with, there's more jobs, regardless of what the magic number is on unemployment. There's more jobs than people to do those jobs because we're not utilizing our full workforce. We're not utilizing the valuable people that could contribute, but we haven't given the tools to allow them into our workforce.
Thank you. How will you work to address the shortage direct support professionals?
And similarly to other professions that work with vulnerable populations in the community, direct support professionals are underpaid, overworked, disrespected. And I mean, let's face it, it's not an easy job. And the job can include 24-hour work days, 7 days a week, and especially when there's a shortage of people in the profession. And I believe the current average salary for someone in the position is around $15. That's not a livable wage when you consider there's poor access to healthcare, there's lack of paid time off, and it's just not an attractive career. So the salary does not provide income to even pay off student loans, which I'm familiar with, and a lot. It's a heavy load. So if we're going to attract people into these positions, we need solutions to incentivize them to look at it as a profession. So, for example, tuition waivers, student loan repayment help, initiatives in community college for adding training programs and courses that support advancement. I mean, those would be a start, but certainly not all inclusive. And by all means, increasing the base wage to a living wage would certainly be something that needs to be supported. So, and in addition, the closures we just spoke about, the 4 facilities, there would be even a greater need for direct personnel once those facilities are closed. So providing grants, government funding, tax incentives for staffing companies to employ professionals with essentials, such as like gas mileage, housing stipends, quality health plans, mandatory health care, mental health, wellness programs, all those would go a long way in increasing the interest in this profession. And finally, I don't want to forget, like, the biggest point is value, respect. I mean, we do all the things, we could do all the things I've mentioned, and if this population is not given respect and appreciation is understood by, you know, through doing all those added bonuses, but it's a vital, crucial job. And if we're not giving this population respect, none of that's going to matter. So it starts with, you know, educating and treating people as they should be treated.
What actions will you take to assist in reducing the risk of crimes committed against people with intellectual and developmental disabilities?
It seems that so far all the questions that you're asking really come back to money and education. Unfortunately, we've seen too many instances where someone with a disability is being treated with extreme measures by law enforcement. And I don't think it's malice on their part as much as it's a training and financial support issue for both the responders and those with the disabilities. And the real solution is to educate and help and support. So to make sure crimes are identified, reported, and treated with some urgency and consideration as the rest of the same as the rest of the population gets. And we need to educate starting from young ages, from children and adults with disabilities, and letting them know or explaining to them what constitutes an actual crime and how do they go about getting help if they need it. Additionally, providing professional development for members of the justice system, the criminal justice system, about what services are available, people with disabilities, and who they can call for support. You know, one of the bad thing, they labeled it wrong, was defund the police, but the premise of what they were trying to convey, just did a very, please don't quote that, but they did a bad job, is really they wanted to give more support to the police by offering them help in situations that they're not educated or equipped or trained in actually handling. So providing more tools, more funding, and disability advocates for training first responders to help when a victim may need services and to help them de-escalate situations would go a long way to our current system, because what we have does not go far enough to help that either side.
How will you work to ensure the education system in Pennsylvania meets the needs of all children, especially those with intellectual and developmental disabilities?
Well, again, back to our old friend, money. Property taxes cause an inequality in the quality of education across the board. This is especially true with special education. School districts in our Commonwealth rely heavily on local property taxes, which just is a bizarre idea, because that means areas with lower property values generate less money for schools than higher wealth areas. So the richer school districts, the better the facilities, the smaller the class sizes, the better equipped the special ed classrooms, and the more support professionals are available. So community tax base shouldn't be determining the type of education available in a local school district. It's just, it's wrong. So each student in Pennsylvania, regardless of their geography or SES, should have the same opportunities no matter what their ability. But because our current system relies on local taxes more heavily than state or federal, our schools are disproportionately funded. So, and Pennsylvania consistently, you know, without a doubt, ranks at the bottom of the percentage of funding that comes from the state. What we really need to do is close this gap, and you know, and my biggest complaint as a citizen, actually, not just as a someone running for the House of Representatives, is we have money on the table and we do not utilize it. We need to have a severance tax on the natural gas companies. And in turn, I know that won't last forever, that tax, but it will help us get out of a big hole. That tax needs to go towards property tax relief. And we need to advocate for a revision of our school funding formulas with higher percentage of school funding coming from the state level rather than the local tax base. And I'd also advocate to change the funding of charter schools in the state. Public schools are often the only option for students with disabilities. And I want to ensure that that money goes to where it's needed most. What we have going on right now for our public school system is it's not working for anyone that goes to school in a low SES area, especially people with disabilities.
The last question: what ways will you promote meaningful employment opportunities in your district for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities?
I see the state rep job as a perfect opportunity to promote inclusion of people with disability in the workforce, because you have both sides of the picture, or all the pieces of the puzzle. You just need to put it together. So I'd actively work to encourage businesses to settle in my district who have diversity and inclusion officers and policies. We are at a unique point in time where the job market, as I mentioned before, is it's work opportunities are changing because of COVID, and the way we do business is changing, and providing all Pennsylvania employers with an incentive to make all jobs accessible to potentially remote opportunities, or really anyone that wants to work should be given the opportunity to work. But we need to ensure there's safe employment opportunities for everyone as well. Taking to heart the framework on work development for people with disabilities, I guess more to your question, I would focus on three main beliefs about my district that we can all benefit from. And that's really my framework is affordability, accessibility, and accountability. I would actively work to support employers in areas who engage in career readiness and employment standards, hiring, retention, and reentry support, entrepreneurship through tax incentives and procurement, and transportation technology and other support services for employment purposes. And I've done a lot in my lifetime. And one of the jobs when I realized I was going to have this interview that comes back to me is for a short while when I was working through grad school, I worked at a Goodwill store in South Florida. Prior to that, I had never had any Goodwill experience, Goodwill store experience. But when I got there, I was so amazed by how they had developed their business plan and how Goodwill was actually an advocate, which I had no idea they were, an advocate of people with disabilities. And they employed so many disabled individuals. It was amazing and incentivizing just to see, hey, wow, like this company is doing wonderful things for people. Why aren't more companies doing something like that? So I mean, really bringing and embracing companies in our district to do things to promote giving jobs and employment opportunities to people with disability is something that I'm pro and would push for, and small businesses as well as large.
Well, Tina, thank you so much for your time here today. Thank you for answering our questions. We really, really appreciate your time here today.
The Meet the Candidate series is an opportunity for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families to hear from candidates on disability issues. Candidates from all parties have been invited to participate. The Arc of Pennsylvania is a non-partisan organization and does not endorse political candidates.